Hey guys, my name is Edwin Giraldo. I'm a graphic designer from Chicago, and today we are going to be doing tutorial number 6. We're going to be talking about padding. So let's get started. First things first, let's open up a new document here. I use Dreamweaver CC. You can use any other text editor that you may like. Okay, so let's title our webpage. We're going to call it padding tutorial, and it's video number 6 of the series. I'm going to call it padding, even though we are actually going to be discussing quite a bit of other things. So again, this time I went and found some Google fonts that I liked, and if you're interested in Google fonts, I did a small tutorial which is number 5, explaining how to use that. But okay, so I found my the Google fonts that I want to use, so I put that in right underneath the title. Now let's set up our styles here. Style, type, text CSS, and style. Great. Okay. Now, first thing we're going to do is that we are going to zero out our body. To do that, we use a couple commands. Very simple: margin 0 pixels, padding 0 pixels as well. Okay. Now, what I've been wanting to do, or what I've been doing since tutorial number 1, is that everything that I'm doing matches up to all tutorials. So what we're doing here today, you should be able to copy and paste into any of the other tutorials that we're doing, and it will make sense. So that's what I'm using. I'm using the same dimensions and the same widths and heights as the other ones, so that if you are following along, it all makes sense. Okay, so the width is going to be 960, as the same as the other ones. We're going to do a height of 945, and we are going to center our wrapper on this stage, and to do that we use our command margin 0 auto. Okay, and we'll leave that alone. Okay, so here we are going to use another div that we're going to call content. Okay, and it's the same as in the past tutorials. So now our content is going to be, it's going to have a width of 960 pixels, the same as our wrapper. Our height for this one is 600 pixels. We're going to float it left. Float it left. And we're going to give it a 0 padding. Okay. Now here's another trick, or just in case you guys didn't know, you can actually attach your font to everything that goes inside that content. So if you don't specify a different type of font, then this will be the default font that it will go to. But since we're using Google fonts, we are going to copy and paste in here our font family name, which is Porret 1. I don't know how you pronounce that, whatever. Alright, so we're going to give it a font size of 14 pixels. We're going to text align this to the left. Okay, and we're going to give it a color of just black. Okay, we're going to save that to our little folder here, and we are going to call it index. And there's another index in there, so let's get that one out real quick. Bear with me. There we go, it's gone, and let's save it in there. Perfect. Okay, we're in business. All right, let's keep going. So as you can see here, within this content div, I also attached a family of fonts to this content div. So you can totally do that, or you can do it separately, whatever you're more comfortable with, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. Okay, so we are going to divide our content. We're going to have a little picture, and we're going to have a section for our content. Okay, so let's go here with content. So inside this content box, this really big one, we're actually going to put 3 other boxes in there. So the first one is content left. Okay, so let's go ahead and type that up. This one's going to have a width of 260 pixels. It's going to have a height of 500 pixels. We're going to float it left. Float that left. And now we're going to give it a padding. Now I'm going to be using shorthand command here, which is that I type in 4 different sets of padding here. Okay, and just as I had taught you guys before, this padding here refers to this first number refers to the padding from the top, this one padding to the right, this one padding at the bottom, and this one padding to the left. Okay, so this is much easier than tapping padding, than typing it separately, which would be like this: padding top, and then you would put 5 pixels or whatever it is, and then you'd go back and go padding bottom, and then another like 2 pixels. So instead of having to type like 4 different ones, we can just use our shorthand script, which is this one right here, which obviously it's a lot easier. All right, so content left is good. So now let's go into our content to the right. So let's set up that one. Content right. Okay. This one is going to have a width of 700 pixels. It's going to have a height of 500 pixels. We're going to float it left as well. Let's see how many times before the video's over I am going to spell float incorrectly. Padding, again, shorthand, 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 0 pixels. Okay, perfect. Okay. Now, you can start noticing that our math is starting to add up, right? Our contents box has a width of 960. So our first box is 260 pixels, and our second box is 700 pixels. So if you add that up, it's going to give you 960, right? Okay. Well, take it easy. All right, and then the last content that we are going to use, or the last box that we're going to put inside our content, is we're just going to call it content bottom. Content bottom. Fantastic. Okay. Now this one, we're going to give it a width. So we're just going to run this all the way along. So we're going to give it 960 pixels wide. We're going to give it a height. How much height do we have left? You guys paying attention? We only have 100 pixels left. Okay? Because our height here is 500, 500 here, and the whole content box here is 600, right? So we only have 100 pixels to play with. So we'll do that. We are going to spell float correctly. Yes, we did. Awesome. We're going to float it left. Okay. We're going to give it padding. 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 0 pixels. Awesome. And now we're actually going to tell our code here that we want a different type of font in this content box. Okay, and we're just going to go with a simple Arial for that. We're going to give it a bigger font size, which let's just do 20 pixels. We're going to align it center. Fantastic. And we're going to give it the same color, just a nice little black. Oops. Fantastic. Okay, So that is all the styles that we're going to be using for our little experiment here today. So now let's move into our body and see how we put this together. Okay, great. Let's make some space here. All right, so we save F5, nothing happens because there's nothing on the stage, right? All right, so let's get started. First div is going to be what? That's right, our wrapper, right? That's our very, very big box that's going to hold everything together. So we use a note here that says end of wrapper. And this is just so that we know where we are. And obviously we need, this is a good idea. You know, you put a couple enters there. And now you know that everything and anything that you want inside that wrapper needs to go in between these two tags. This one and this one, okay? If you type anything outside of it, well, it's not gonna be inside the wrapper. All right, so the first one, div. First one inside the wrapper is div ID, and it's gonna be content, right? That's the first one we made. Let's put that in there. Let's put a note here. It says end of content. Let's just leave it at content so we don't get confused here. Okay, a couple spaces there. Now inside our content, we're going to use div, first one, div ID, right? The first box is our content left, right? Now we had said that this one was actually going to have an image, right? So let's use another note here. It says end of content left, you know, picture, right? Remember, the notes are just for you. Nobody's going to see that. Nobody's ever going to see that. Just the coder, yourself, whoever's working on the back end of the website. I like to do it because when web pages get really confusing, then you know where you are and where you need to go. All right, so here we're going to use a picture, right? So image source, and we browse for our picture. Wait a couple hundred years, and there it is. There's our picture. All right, put that in there. We define a width for that picture, which is 260. Define a height for it, and we put an alt over it, and let's just say our image. All right, let's close that. Let's hit F5 on the Mac, and now here is the beginning of our content. Okay, so let's keep going. The next div that needs to go in is our content right? So div ID, content right. Close that div. Let's put another little note here. End of content right. Okay, close that up. And the last one is the one at the bottom, right? We called it content bottom. So div ID, content bottom. Close that, make a little note. End of content bottom. Fantastic. Okay, we're looking really good. F5. All right, so now we have our picture here with our first div. Here, let's just grab it from here. Okay, that's our first div right there. Got our second, our content to the right there. And then we got our content at the bottom, which is right there. Fantastic. Okay, now we are going to grab some ipsilorum, okay, which is just holder text. All right, just so I don't have to type a whole bunch of stuff in there, we're gonna do it like this. Okay, so we're gonna talk about something we haven't talked about before, which is the headers. Okay, headers are defined by letters and a number. So your headers are H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. Usually you don't really need more than 6. If you do, you might be doing something wrong. I usually use max of 3. So here we're gonna type in our first one, H1, and let's say our first paragraph. Okay, so that's gonna be our title. After that, we're gonna make our first we did our first header here with H1s. Now we're going to do our first paragraph with some text that I just copied off the internet. Nothing fancy schmancy. Okay, we're going to save. We're going to hit F5, and now here we see. You see how this our first header is up here. It has some space before and after our text, which is our paragraph. So let's set up another. We're gonna use header number 2, which is H2, and we'll call that our second paragraph. Okay, close that, H2. Let's use another paragraph here, and let's close that, and let's give it some space. Okay, we save, F5, and now we have our second paragraph. Fantastic. All right, so now let's put some text at the bottom here, and here we're not going to use any paragraphs or anything like that. We're just going to type I don't know, this is I am working with text and adding padding. I don't know, padding. Okay, fantastic. We save, hit F5, and here's our padding. Now you've noticed that this text looks different from this one, right? Because this one is, over here in our div ID in content bottom, we told it that we wanted this type of font, and we wanted 20 pixels for the weight of this font. This is why this one is bigger than this one, right? Fantastic. All right, let's see the live view. Let's see how this looks. Okay, obviously this changes into a different font. Why? Because we're using Google Fonts, and we were expecting that. Okay, so this is good, but what's going on here? Look at how flush this is to the left here. That looks horrific, right? So now we're actually going to get into some padding. So let's go back into our normal view. Okay, so our first paragraph, this is inside the div ID content right. So first we're going to add some padding to Mr. Content Right, okay, which is right there. So let's go back into our styles and let's locate Content Right, and here he is. Okay, so now let's say we want to add padding so that it's not so flush to that image. We want to add some padding to the left. So we go here. We have our padding. We know, excuse me, this is the padding from the top, this is the padding from the right, this is the padding from the bottom, and this is the padding for the left. So this is the one that we want to use. So let's give it 20 pixels of padding. We save, we hit F5, and look at what happened. Now I actually did this on purpose because I want to show you guys what's important to keep in mind when you're using padding. When you use padding, you're adding, right, extra pixels from the edge of your div to the text, or whatever is it that you have inside this div. Could be a picture, whatever it is. So if we add to this side, we need to take off from the div so that it still fits in the hole that we have. So how do we do that? Well, simple. Since we go back into our content right here, right, we just realized that we put in 20 pixels, right, to the left. So in the width, we're going to subtract 20 pixels. So 20 pixels minus 700 pixels is 680 pixels. So you type in 680 here, you save it, you hit F5, and voila, now it's back to where it's supposed to be. You see how the div went back in there? All right, let's see our live view. Wow, that looks much better because now we have some breathing room here. Fantastic. But you know what? I still think I want to put a little bit more. So let's put in 5 more pixels. Type in 5, But now I need to take from the width, I need to take another 5 away. So now it's not 680, but 675. Save, we refresh, and now it moved, but it stayed in place. We check out our live view. That is beautiful. Look at that, looks nice and tight. Fantastic. All right, so now let's check over here. Now this just looks bad, right? It's way too close to the image. This should be like somewhere in the middle, right? Okay, well, let's see what we can do. We have content bottom, right? So let's locate that content bottom in our styles, which is right here. Now we know that this first padding number refers to the padding from the top, right? So let's add some padding. Let's say that we are going to add, let's say 40 pixels of padding, right? We hit save, F5, and now it's where we want it to be. But again, remember, anything that you add on padding, you need to subtract from your div. If not, it's going to run off to the page. You see here the blue div, and you see that little dotted line at the bottom? That's our content wrapper. So this already overextended outside the content wrapper, and we definitely don't want that. Okay, so since we added 40 of padding here, okay, what we need to do is subtract from the height. Okay, so 100 pixels minus 40 pixels is 60 pixels. We hit save, F5, and now look at that. Perfect. Now let's check out our live view. Boom, there it is. Okay, so here, guys, you have learned a couple of things. One, how to use your H1 tags, how to use your paragraph tags, how to use H2, and how to use another paragraph. You've also learned how to use Google Fonts. Again, a little refresher on how to use Google Fonts. And you have also learned that you can attach different types of fonts to your divs. So the same as how we did up here, right? This div has Arial attached to it, while this div has the nice little Google font that I thought it was cool. And they're both inside our content div. Okay? So if you don't remember, if you have a content, you have the content div here, right? And I've attached the font to that content. Now, if you don't specify otherwise, okay? If you don't specify otherwise, all the font inside that content, inside this div, will be this font here. Well, this one. But because at the bottom, I specified that I don't want this font, I don't want this font, I want this font, that's why it changed. Alright, guys, well, that's it for the tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave me your comments, suggestions, anything below. Hate mail, love mail, whatever you want. I also put in the description a link to a really cool place I talked to you guys about in the last tutorial, about where you can get really cool information about making websites and that sort of thing. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Later.